Have you ever wondered why all people are not of the same height? What is the scientific reason for mood swings? What triggers your body from dangerous situations? All these questions lead to one answer, and that is hormones and their actions. In this video, we will be learning the mechanism of hormone and their action in humans. Recall that there are more than 50 hormones that regulate the body's activities and internal coordination. First, let us recall the definition of hormones. Hormones are the chemical messengers produced by the endocrine glands and released into the bloodstream directly and not through the ducts. They control various bodily functions such as growth, reproduction, digestion, and emotions, and often more. Before understanding the action of hormones, we should understand the basics of hormone receptors. So the hormone binds to specific protein or the hormone receptors in the target tissues and exert an effect on them. My next question is, are receptors specific? The answer is yes. Each hormone has its own receptor in the target organ. Now, let us check the different types of receptors. Here, the two types of receptors can be identified, and they are the membrane-bound receptors and the intracellular receptors. And what are membrane-bound receptors? The hormone receptors which are present on the cell membrane of the target cell are the membrane-bound receptors, whereas the receptors present inside the target cell are the intracellular receptors. Then what is a hormone receptor complex? The binding of a hormone to its receptor leads to the formation of a hormone receptor complex. Another point is that each hormone has its own receptor. Now, let us check the classification of hormones in our bodies. Based on the chemical nature of the hormones, they are categorized into 4 different groups. So let us check them one by one. Peptides, polypeptides or the protein hormones, steroids, iodothioronins, and the amino acid derivatives are the main 4 groups. So now we can classify hormones under these categories. Insulin, glucagon, and pituitary hormones along with hypothalamic hormones belong to peptide or polypeptide or the protein hormones. And they are generally insoluble in lipids and thus they cannot enter the cell through the plasma membrane. Hence we say that these receptors for such hormones are seen in the plasma membrane. Cortisol, testosterone, estradiol and progesterone are the some steroid hormones. So what are their peculiarity? They are fat soluble and can pass across the plasma membrane to the cytoplasm. Hence, the receptors for these hormones are seen intracellularly. Thyroid hormones belong to the iodothioronins. They are also fat soluble but their receptors are seen inside the nucleus. The hormone epinephrine is an example for an amino acid derivative. Now, let us focus on the mechanism of the hormonal actions. The mechanism of hormonal action is divided into 2 groups based on the binding of hormones to the specific receptors, and they are as follows. One is the fixed membrane receptor mechanism and the other type is a mobile receptor mechanism. First, let us check the mechanism of the fixed membrane receptors. Hormones of this kind are water soluble and cannot pass through the bilayer lipid membrane. So the receptors are fixed on the cell membrane and the hormones can bind to the specific receptors. So what happens once the hormone gets bound to the specific receptor? The binding of hormones on the specific receptors on the target cells activates the enzyme adenylyl cyclase in the cell membrane and causes the production of cyclic AMP or the CAMP or we can say that there will be a generation of the secondary messenger. Such a movement develops a biochemical response. The cyclic AMP diffuses through the cell membrane and activates, that is a protein kinase, to various enzymatic reactions to cause the biochemical changes. After the target cell responds to the changes, CAMP is deactivated by a group of enzymes, that is phosphodiesterase. And this is a case with protein hormones. But what about steroid hormones? They can easily pass through the lipid bilayer in the cytoplasmic region, and the cell has receptors with free-floating nature. In other words, we can name it the activation of the enzymatic activity. Certain biochemical changes occur once a hormone gets attached to the receptor. Recall that there are receptors of thyroid hormones seen in the nucleus of the cell. So, how will the functions take place? Some hormones like testosterone, progesterone, estrogen, cortisol and thyroxine have their receptors localized inside the nucleus, and the hormone receptor complex is carried inside the nucleus. The hormone receptor complex initiates transcription of the DNA to form specific mRNA. The mRNA initiates protein synthesis in the cytoplasm, and the protein causes few biochemical changes in the cell. So there is a need to regulate all this secretion of hormone production as well as the regulation of the hormones in targeted organs. The biochemical actions and the body activities get altered if the hormone actions are not controlled. So what is the purpose of the feedback mechanism in hormonal action? Just think. Now it's time to summarize what we have learned.
Manorama Horizon. Learning made simple.